There's a moment every man remembers. The second he realizes something feels different. A glance, smile that lasts a little too long, conversation that seems intentional, and suddenly his mind starts racing. But here's what most men never understand. When she creates jealousy, the real danger isn't what she's doing, it's how he reacts. When she makes you jealous on purpose, do this instead is not about chasing, controlling, or playing games. It's about seeing what most men miss. Because when she makes you jealous on purpose, do this instead reveals a psychological pattern that can quietly destroy confidence, attraction, and emotional control. Stay until the end, because this may completely change how you see these situations from now on. And if you're a man who wants to become mentally stronger, more respected, and emotionally unshakable, subscribe to the channel right now. This channel is built for men who want real psychological insight, not surface-level advice, and we're pushing toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Topic 1. Why some women create jealousy on purpose. Many men assume that when a woman tries to make them jealous, it automatically means she's losing interest or being disrespectful. But emotional reality is usually more complicated than it looks on the surface. In many cases, she's not trying to push him away. She's trying to measure something she may not even fully understand herself. Some women create these situations because they want to feel like they still have impact, attention, or importance. It's almost like checking whether their presence still matters, even if they never say it out loud. There's a huge difference between creating jealousy through manipulation and creating jealousy through emotional insecurity. Sometimes she doesn't know how to express loneliness, fear of losing connection, or the need for reassurance in a healthy way. So without realizing it, she creates small situations that trigger a reaction. It might be casually mentioning another guy, laughing a little louder around someone else, or acting extra social when he's nearby. Not necessarily because she wants another man, but because she wants to see what happens inside him when he feels threatened. The problem is that most men only see the behavior on the surface and ignore what's happening behind the emotional curtain. They react to the action without understanding the intention underneath it. And that's exactly where the biggest mistakes begin. Because when someone reacts without understanding the psychological game, they often give away exactly what they shouldn't. What seems like a simple moment of jealousy can actually reveal something much deeper about emotional power, control, and self-worth. And how he reacts in those next few minutes can completely change the dynamic between them. Topic 2. The male reaction that almost always backfires when a man realizes she may be trying to make him jealous. His first reaction usually comes from instinct, not logic. His body heats up, his mind starts creating scenarios, and before he even thinks clearly, he feels the urge to act. Some men confront immediately. Others go cold on purpose, play emotional games, or try to get attention back. It feels natural in the moment, but most of the time that reaction comes from a bruised ego, not emotional clarity. There's something strange about jealousy. It convinces a man that he needs to regain control fast. So he sends impulsive texts, asks too many questions, watches social media, tries to figure out who the other guy is, or changes his behavior just to prove he's unaffected. But the more he reacts, the more emotional information he gives away. It's like a poker player showing his cards too early. Suddenly the tension is no longer about her, it's entirely happening inside him. Most men don't realize that overreacting creates the exact situation that weakens their position. Because when someone loses emotional balance, they start acting in search of external reassurance. And that completely changes the energy of the interaction. Instead of looking confident, he looks desperate. Instead of looking valuable, he looks afraid of losing. And that's when an uncomfortable question starts to appear. Maybe the real problem wasn't what she did, but how much power he gave it over his emotional state. Topic 3. The hidden psychology behind emotional testing. Very few men realize that many jealousy situations don't begin as attacks. They begin as silent tests. Not always intentional, not always conscious, but still a test. Some women watch how he reacts to small emotional threats because they want to understand something deeper: stability. It's not really about the other man in the picture. It's about finding out whether he stays grounded when his sense of security gets shaken. This happens because emotional attraction isn't built only on good moments or sweet words. It also comes from how someone handles discomfort. Imagine a man who seems confident when everything is calm, but completely changes after a small provocation. His posture changes, his mood changes, his tone changes, and without realizing it, he reveals that his stability depends on her behavior. That detail may seem small, but psychologically, it says far more than any romantic speech ever could. A lot of the time, the test isn't about winning or losing, it's about consistency. Emotionally mature people pay attention to how someone reacts under pressure, because that's when real personality shows up. It's easy to seem secure when nothing threatens the ego. The hard part is staying the same person when discomfort, doubt, or comparison enters the picture. And that's where some men realize something uncomfortable. Maybe the issue was never the test itself, but how little control they had over their own emotions. Topic 4. Why jealousy makes men lose their power without realizing it. Jealousy rarely shows up loudly. It usually slips in quietly, disguised as concern, care, or protectiveness. At first, a man thinks he's just reacting because he cares. But there's a fine line between caring and losing emotional control. When the mind starts imagining scenarios, comparing behaviors, and interpreting every detail as a threat, he stops seeing reality and starts reacting to insecurity instead. The dangerous part is that this loss of power doesn't feel obvious in the moment. It happens in small actions, replying to fast, demanding explanations, changing moods because of the attention she gives someone else. Little by little, he stops acting like himself and starts acting according to fear. It's like driving while staring only into the rearview mirror. You lose direction because you're too focused on what might go wrong. And the harder he tries to control the situation, the less emotional control he actually has. There's something many men only understand too late. Attraction rarely grows in an atmosphere filled with tension. When someone gives off anxiety, emotional monitoring, or constant need for reassurance, the energy shifts. The relationship stops feeling light and starts feeling like a silent competition. Without realizing it, he trades presence for worry, confidence for emotional surveillance. And eventually, an uncomfortable but necessary question appears. When did the fear of losing someone start costing him his peace of mind? Topic 5. The difference between caring and chasing validation. There's a quiet difference between showing genuine interest and desperately needing reassurance. Many men confuse caring with emotional monitoring. They think being present means constantly checking, asking questions, or trying to keep everything under control. But when care comes from fear, it stops being connection and turns into emotional dependence. And that shift is almost invisible at first. A man can deeply care about someone and still keep his emotional balance intact. The problem begins when his happiness depends entirely on her response. When a delayed text ruins his whole mood, something has already fallen out of alignment. Not because caring is wrong, but because needing validation turns every small situation into a threat. It's like placing your self-worth into someone else's hands and hoping they handle it carefully every single day. Emotionally strong men understand something most people learn too late. Loving someone doesn't mean abandoning yourself. They don't constantly need to prove they deserve attention because they aren't trying to convince anyone of their value. That creates a different kind of presence, calmer, stronger, harder to shake. And when that difference becomes noticeable, an important question starts to rise. What actually makes a man look strong under emotional pressure? Topic 6. What emotionally strong men do instead. Emotionally strong men are not the ones who never feel jealous. They're the ones who don't let jealousy take the wheel. They notice discomfort, recognize what they're feeling, but don't react impulsively. There's a huge difference between feeling something and instantly acting because of it. While most people try to fix tension in the heat of the moment, emotionally grounded men understand that not every emotion deserves an immediate response. Sometimes real control comes from not chasing an explanation. When they notice something that feels like provocation, they observe first. They pay attention to context, frequency, intention, and especially how the situation affects their internal state. Instead of creating instant confrontation, they create mental space. Emotionally intelligent men know that fast reactions are usually driven by anxiety, and anxiety rarely produces clarity. It's like trying to see the bottom of a lake while the water is still being stirred up. Nothing looks clear yet. There's something powerful about staying centered when the environment tries to pull someone into emotional chaos. It doesn't mean accepting everything or pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to hand over emotional stability to a temporary situation. Some men realize that when they stop reacting automatically, they begin to notice patterns they never saw before. And in that internal silence, something important begins to appear. The ability to understand not only what she's doing, but what that behavior is trying to trigger inside him. Topic 7. Why silence can be more powerful than confrontation. Many men believe they need to respond immediately when they feel provoked. They think silence means weakness, passivity, or fear of confrontation. But there's a kind of silence that doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from self-control. When someone reacts too quickly, they're usually trying to escape their own anxiety. But a man who can pause before reacting communicates something rare. He isn't controlled by the pressure of the moment. Strategic silence doesn't mean ignoring feelings. It means refusing to let emotions make decisions for him. Instead of arguing, explaining pain, or trying to win an emotional battle, he watches. Sometimes the simple act of not reacting completely changes the dynamic, because the person provoking often expects impact. They expect jealousy, discomfort, competition, or emotional intensity. And when none of that appears, the energy shifts in a completely different direction. There's something psychologically powerful about not needing to prove anything immediately. Silence creates room to notice intentions, patterns, and contradictions that would normally disappear inside an argument. It's like turning down the noise in a room so you can finally hear what's actually being said. And strangely enough, when a man stops fighting to control the situation, he begins to understand something deeper. Not every provocation deserves confrontation, but every provocation reveals something hidden underneath. Topic 8. How to read the difference between manipulation and insecurity. Not every attempt to create jealousy comes from bad intentions. That's a mistake many men make, assuming every confusing behavior is calculated manipulation. Sometimes she isn't trying to control him, she's trying to be noticed. There's a difference between someone creating discomfort to gain emotional control and someone acting from insecurity, fear of rejection, or need for validation. Understanding that difference changes how a man interprets the situation entirely. A manipulative woman usually repeats patterns. She provokes, watches the reaction, creates competition, and seems energized by emotional instability. An insecure woman, on the other hand, often behaves inconsistently. One moment she seeks closeness, the next she creates distance. She may not be playing games at all, she may simply be lost inside her own emotions. A common example is mentioning another guy not to hurt him, but to see if she still matters emotionally. Emotionally intelligent men learn to observe frequency, context, and patterns. They don't judge based on one isolated moment. Repeated behavior reveals intention. Occasional behavior may reveal vulnerability. That kind of understanding requires patience, because quick reactions often interpret everything through pain. And when a man learns to separate manipulation from insecurity, he realizes something important. Not every situation requires defense. Sometimes it requires deeper understanding. Topic 9. The dangerous trap of trying to win her back through competition. When a man feels like he's losing emotional ground, there's often an automatic urge to compete. He wants to prove he's better, more attractive, more interesting, or more desirable than any other man around. It feels instinctive, almost natural. But the problem is that the moment he enters competition, he stops acting authentically. He's no longer being himself. He's trying to win an invisible race. Many men completely change their behavior when they feel threatened. They post more on social media, try to seem indifferent, flirt with other women, or exaggerate displays of confidence. It's like they're silently saying, "Look what you could lose." But there's a trap hidden inside that behavior. When someone desperately tries to prove value, they usually communicate the opposite. Competition rarely projects strength. It often reveals fear of not being enough. Emotionally mature men understand that relationships should not feel like arenas, because when competition becomes constant, connection turns into validation. Instead of building presence, he tries to build advantage. The harder he fights to win, the more it looks like he's afraid of losing. Eventually, the question shifts. Maybe real power isn't about fighting for attention, but recognizing when something shouldn't require competition in the first place. Topic 10. The real power move, becoming emotionally unshakable. At the end of the day, Strongest man emotionally is not the one who controls everything around him. It's the one who controls himself. He doesn't need to win arguments, prove value, or react to every provocation just to feel in charge. There's a different kind of calm in a man who truly knows who he is. Once someone develops emotional stability, they stop depending on other people's actions to maintain inner peace. And that changes the way he shows up in every relationship. Being emotionally unshakable doesn't mean being cold, distant, or detached. It means refusing to lose yourself under emotional pressure. A man like that still feels jealousy, insecurity, or discomfort, but he doesn't turn those emotions into impulsive decisions. He understands that feeling something doesn't require immediate action. It's like learning to sail during a storm. He can't control the ocean, but he learns not to capsize with every wave. Ironically, when he stops trying to control everything, he starts gaining something much bigger: self-respect. Emotional stability creates a presence that's difficult to manipulate. And when a man stops reacting out of fear, neediness, or urgency, he begins acting from choice instead. That's the moment the game quietly changes. Not because he defeated someone else, but because he finally stopped being controlled by what used to shake his mind. Conclusion. At the end of the day, moments like these reveal far more than relationship problems. They reveal emotional patterns most men never stop to question. The real shift begins when a man stops reacting automatically and starts understanding what truly controls his decisions. Because jealousy is not always the enemy. But losing control because of it can quietly shape the entire direction of a relationship. The question is, how many times have you reacted without realizing what was really happening beneath the surface? What could change in your life if you learned to stay calm when most people lose themselves emotionally? If this video made you see things differently, take that awareness into your real life. Start paying attention. Start observing. Start responding with intention instead of impulse. And if you want more content that helps men build confidence, emotional strength, and psychological awareness, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community of men who want clarity, control, and self-respect. And your support helps us get closer to our goal of 1,000 subscribers.